Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Gabowski again. Thanks so much for joining me again and trying to figure out our second half of the story and our mystery in Mr. Sniff and the Motel Mystery. Now if you remember in the story yesterday, we had quite a few characters and quite a few strange things that were happening in our story. Mr. Sniff, he is the guy in the front. He is our detective, if you remember. He's the one that is trying to figure out the mystery, which happens to be how the words help, help were written on Madam Bassett's on her mirror in her hotel room. So that is the big mystery that we're trying to figure out. So before we go any further, let's recall and think about all the strange things and clues that were happening along the way in our story. Hopefully this will help us narrow down who the suspect is and who the person is that really committed the crime. So here's my big long list of clues and strange things that happened in our story yesterday. Number 1, help, help was written on the bathroom mirror in Madam Bassett's hotel room. It was written in lipstick, if you remember. Number 3, the jellyfish that they found in the pool. They thought that was really strange. Why would there be a jellyfish floating around in the pool? Number 4, Sergeant O'Hound's bed was made incorrectly. Sergeant O'Hound was another character, but he was also a guest that stayed in Mr. Mutt's hotel. And the bed was made so where you pulled up the sheets, when you stuck your feet in to go to bed at night, they wouldn't go all the way to the end. So that was silly and strange. Nobody makes a bed that way. Dr. Small says he sees a green slimy thing come by his window every night. Dr. Small again is another guest that stays at the hotel, and he sees this green slimy thing kind of waving around in front of his window every night. It says it scares some people, but he sees it all the time. Number 6, the bell wouldn't work at the front desk. If you remember, when that little baby went to ding the bell, it didn't make a sound. So Mr. Sniff took that bell and flipped it over and realized something was stuck up underneath there. Yeah, it was the bubble gum. So that stopped it from making the ringing sound. Number 7, flowers and ragweed were in all the guests' bedrooms. Now flowers and ragweed can definitely make someone sneeze if they have allergies. So it was very strange that flowers were put in there. So we'll just have to find out if that has anything to do with our story and with our mystery. Let's continue on and find out what happens in the rest of our story here. Let's finish up this mystery once and for all. So we left off on this part where Mr. Sniff is here with Mrs. Mutt. It says, "Of course," he said, "the case is solved. I will tell you how tonight. Please ask all your guests to come to the beach at 9 o'clock and ask your boys to make a fire." The moon was full. Madam Bassett, Sergeant O'Hound, Dr. Small, and the other guests were on the beach. Jill came with her boyfriend, Wolf and Garson. Bill and Andy made a huge fire. "Where is Mr. Sniff?" asked Mr. Mutt. "Here!" cried a voice. "That is it!" shouted Dr. Small. A shiny green head with hair like wet black snakes was coming toward them. It glowed in the dark. That looks like what Mr. Sniff was describing, what Mr. Small or Dr. Small was describing coming towards his window every night. Wonder why Mr. Sniff has it. "It is a wonder," said Mr. Sniff, "what a plastic light stick and some seaweed can do. You snap it in the middle and shake it up a little and it starts to light. People use them on roads at night when their cars stall or just for fun. It had the letter A written on it. I found it in one of the boys' room." Wow, so now we're seeing what's happening with that little slimy green thing. But then also, if you notice on the stick, Mr. Sniff noticed that there's a letter A on it. Can anyone think of a character in our story that has the letter A in it? Did you say Andy? Yes, there is a character that has the letter A in the beginning of his first name. And so Andy, if you remember, is the son of Mr. Mutt, and Mr. Mutt, again, is the owner of the hotel. Let's continue reading and find out. Andy hung his head. Mr. Sniff put his arm around Andy's shoulder. "Andy," said Mrs. Mutt, "did you do all those things?" "Yes," said Andy. "But how did you find out, Mr. Sniff?" "First I asked myself who could have done it," said Mr. Sniff. "Jill could have. She makes the beds. Sergeant O'Hound's bed was tricked. Mrs. Mutt could have. She wears Smooch. The lipstick on Madam Bassett's bathroom mirror was Smooch." So that's the name of the lipstick. "I tasted it myself. In fact, all the Mutts could have done it. They all know where the keys are. Next, I asked myself, who could not have done these things?" So it sounds like at this point, one of the suspects could have been Jill. Jill, remember, is the maid that comes to all the rooms to clean them and get them ready for the next guests. So maybe she could have done it. But then also Mrs. Mutt possibly could have done it because she had the same lipstick that was used to write "help, help" on the mirror in Madame Bassett's hotel room. Let's see. I found yellow ragweed mixed in with the flowers in many rooms. Someone who does not get hay fever put it there. Jill, you get hay fever. I saw you take a pill, so I did not think it could be you. How did you know it was Andy? Asked Mr. Mutt. So one of the suspects, the person that possibly could have done this crime, Jill, now sounds like she's been eliminated, which means we're going to cross her name off. She could not have possibly done this because of the fact that she gets hay fever. And that's kind of like an allergy. When you have an allergy to certain types of flowers or tree pollen or something like that, you might get something called hay fever. So it's not a good thing for her to be around that. So she couldn't possibly be the one putting ragweed and flowers in all the guest bedrooms. So she's one that we could probably safely take off the list. It had to be someone, said Mr. Sniff, who does not get hay fever, who knows where to find lipstick, who is not afraid of spider crabs or jellyfish, and someone who likes to play with light sticks. Then I found bubble gum inside the bell in the office. Someone put it there and it would not ring. Only Andy chews bubble gum. The case was solved. Why did Andy write "help, help" on my mirror? Madame Bassett asked. Because he wanted help. Mutt's motel is all filled up. Andy has to sleep in the top bunk. It is very hot there. Sometimes he sleeps under a tree outside. Room 13 is very small for 4 growing boys. I am sorry, said Andy. Mrs. Mutt hugged Andy. So again, if you remember, when Mr. Sniff was taking Andy, or when Andy was taking Mr. Sniff into his room, they noticed that, or Andy had mentioned that he sleeps on the top bunk and it gets very hot up there. I can't imagine how fun that would be trying to sleep in a very, very hot bed. As soon as we can, said Mr. Mutt, we will give each of you boys a room of your own. Wonderful, said Madame Bassett. Families are important, said Sergeant O'Hound. Now, said Mr. Mutt, marshmallows for everyone. Mr. Sniff said, not for me. No, thank you. I want to watch the ghost crabs in the sand. They only come out at night, so I will say good night. Andy followed Mr. Sniff. He took him by the hand. Thank you, Mr. Sniff, he said. I am glad you are my friend. And if you notice real carefully, there is a letter A on his jacket there as he's walking along the beach. Oh, boys and girls, that was so much fun. We finally figured out the mystery and Mr. Sniff and the motel mystery. So it wasn't who I suspected all along. I did not suspect that it was Andy. I thought, again, it could be Jill or it could be Mrs. Mutt. Now, we realized it couldn't be Jill because she would never put flowers or ragweed in all the hotel guest rooms. She's allergic to that. She would never do that. So we could safely cross her name off the list. We figured out it couldn't be Mrs. Mutt because she wouldn't be the one. She doesn't like to be around the crabs or the jellyfish or any of that kind of stuff. So we kind of crossed her name off the list too. But again, I was very shocked and surprised that it was Andy all along. Were you thinking that it could be Andy? Did you outsmart me and these characters in this story and figure it out? That's pretty cool if you did, because I didn't figure it out. But anyways, that was fun trying to use all of our clues to figure out the mystery, and we have it solved. Thank you so much, boys and girls, for joining us for that story, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye for now.